This program is supported by the Innertown Record, your weekly hometown community newspaper covering the Kearsarge Sunapee Sunshine region of New Hampshire. The Innertown Record.
Welcome back. I'm Abby Peel, your host of Yankee Chronicle. We tend to think of our Lake Sunapee as a pristine and super clean body of water, but things are not as good as we would hope for the future. Let's now hear from Stu Greer, a member of LSPA's board.
LSPA's mission is devoted to the environmental quality of the Lake Sunapee watershed. It's been around for 125 years. A lot has happened in that time, but the original mission statement is as relevant now as it was back then, which is rather amazing. What is a watershed? A watershed is an area within which all the water flows down to a basin. And so if you think of it in those simplified terms, watershed is kind of easy to understand. There are 6 towns in the Lake Sunapee watershed. The best way to visualize the watershed is to go to LSPA in Sunapee Harbor and look at the table that shows you exactly what a watershed is and has features and functions to allow you to understand how the water runs in from different areas, the streams, sunken ships. It's really quite fascinating, and I'd encourage you, if you go, bring your kids to operate the table and bring your neighbors. It's really, really impressive. It's about 47 square miles in size, and it includes 13 lakes and ponds in those 6 towns. So the LSPA as an organization is focused on that watershed, and I'd go a little further and say not just the watershed, but the towns in the watershed, because the practices are going to be the same regardless of whether something is on one side of a line or another. The Watershed Committee, which is made up of volunteers and a few staff members of LSPA, but primarily volunteers of a very diverse group of individuals from the watershed. They're not all from Sunapee, not all from New London. They're out in Springfield and Sutton and elsewhere, but it's a diverse group. Many of whom were not involved in environmental causes before coming to the area and learning about what's important up here. And the Watershed Committee's charge is to move the LSPA Watershed Management Plan objectives forward. So to identify the tasks that should be priorities and to implement those tasks. So we got together with the committee and we identified 2 things that we should focus on. One of them was enforcement of existing zoning ordinances in some of the waterfront towns, New London, Sunapee, and Newbury to start with. And the other was to provide a public awareness campaign, because one of the most important things to change the trend of declining water quality in our watershed is to have individual behaviors change. If we don't do that, then our water's really in trouble. Some of the causes of water quality decline have to do with things like phosphorus and salt and other substances running off into the lake. For instance, 80% of the phosphorus that runs into lakes and ponds is due to human activity. Things like construction, things like fertilizer on lawns, septic systems that aren't maintained, all create runoff of phosphorus into the lakes. What happens when there's excess phosphorus in a lake or a pond is you get cyanobacteria blooms, which is a toxic bloom that is harmful to people and to animals, and it can ruin lakes and ponds, make them unusable. And if lakes and ponds are unusable, not only do you not have the ability to enjoy the water, you have a problem with economic impact. The value of property is directly related to how clean water is. And so we're hoping that with the public awareness campaign, if people aren't just concerned about the environmental quality of the water, we hope that they're concerned about the economic aspect that directly affects everybody. The economic value of an area is primarily reliant on the tax base of property, and it's property in the whole town. And so if you don't have the tax base there, you're not going to have the services, you're not going to have schools, and your property value is going to go in a downward direction pretty quickly. So there's a number of things that individuals can do to help preserve the quality of water in our watershed. Eliminate the use of phosphorus-free fertilizer. Don't apply it within 100 feet of water. Use non-toxic pesticides and herbicides, which otherwise will run off into the water. Pick up after your pet. Maintain your septic systems if you have them. Get them pumped every 3 years. Get them inspected. If you have a lawn that goes all the way down to the water, plant buffers along the water's edge that'll help retain the water, help it soak in before it gets into the lakes and ponds. Don't feed the waterfowl. Want to reduce E. coli in the water. Cover bare soil with plants or mulch. Follow state and local tree cutting and construction rules. So one of the things we've been doing is we've been going out and talking to homeowners associations, lake protective associations, and civic groups about this public awareness campaign called Let's Be Clear. And we're happy to continue talking to more groups because it's important we're all doing the same thing at the same time. So if anyone wants more information about this program or about contacting us to set up a presentation, they can go to lakesunapee.org and look up Let's Be Clear.
Thanks, Stu. Please consider what you are using to beautify and sustain your own property and what its effect has on our greater watershed. When we come back, Fred Nystrom with the Potter Place train station will show off its newest addition. But first, let's show off another one of the good folks that make this show possible.